Welcome to another important episode of Life Talks. My name is Dan. I'm with Ben and Drew. We are the teaching pastors at Life Fellowship. In our last episode, we got the very important, and I'm going to say it, sad news that Ben is going to be transitioning to a new position of leadership in a few months at Lake Ann Camp, where he'll become the director of Lake Ann Camp. And so he kind of explained his journey and all that was behind that, the story of God's call to him there. But obviously, that leaves those of us who are part of the Life Fellowship family with a lot of questions. What's going on? What's happening? What the future look like, and so forth. And so we thought we would take an episode and just kind of fill in some of the blanks. So, Ben, let's go ahead and review. At the end of your last episode, you talked about what your transition timeline looks like, but go ahead and review that for all of our listeners, if you would.
Yeah, so I'm preaching until, not every Sunday, but until October 6th is my final Sunday. I'll have about a 3-month sabbatical, and then I start January 1st up at Lake Ann Camp up in Michigan. So
in the interim, from when this is being recorded at the middle of July through the first week of October, is going to be just pretty much what you've come to expect at Life Fellowship. Don't expect to see a lot of changes. I'm still the lead pastor,
still going to be leading meetings and preaching and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
So as that continues, though, obviously behind the scenes, Drew and I are going to be picking up a lot of the load. Yeah. So the unique thing about Life Fellowship is that while we use the term lead pastor, it is very much a part of a teaching team, a leadership team. Yeah. Drew just joined our staff just 6 weeks ago.
Yay!
Yeah, he got
but
about
found out about the transition before I even packed the moving truck.
And still decided to come, which is indicative of the fact that he believed God would have him be here. Yeah. And so, Drew, as you've come on, you are now the ministry executive pastor. Kind of explain to our listeners what all is under your purvey and what you're doing on the team in that role.
So I am over all ministries outside of the administrative end of the church. So
missions.
And missions. So I'm governing and kind of, I'm just coming underneath these folks right now and kind of shoring them up and just getting to know what their ministry areas are all about, where they are. And I'm just observing. So I'm looking at life groups, I'm looking at children's ministry, I'm looking at youth ministry, and I'm just observing to see where the gaps are, in the future so that we can start shaping and helping to develop even better those ministries, as well as the leaders that are leading those ministries. So I'll be kind of observing for a while as we're hiring some positions. We need to get a discipleship pastor in here. We need to get some other positions
Director of Assimilation.
Director of Assimilations, maybe part-time women's ministry leader. So while I'm doing that, I'm trying to get my feet on the ground at a new church of 800 people, while I'm now going to be taking on some of the roles that are, pulpit, teaching, and just pastoral
So
duties.
one of the things Life Fellowship has done for several years now is that we have a teaching team.
Yeah.
Ben has led that and kind of directs the vision of the church in his role. In the interim, until we add another member of the leadership team, then Drew and I are going to be sharing both the responsibility of we don't need a fresh vision, we've got a great vision. So we're just going to be continuing to implement the vision that we have, which is that every man, woman, boy, and girl in Lake Norman and beyond be able to hear and respond to the gospel of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
That's the thing that drives us. That's not going to change.
That's right.
Our mission is to pursue at all costs a passionate, God-centered life. We do that by living in community, investing in growth, finding our purpose, and then engaging in the Great Commission.
See, you could have gotten a $5 gift card at staff meeting.
Got that for
Chick-fil-A.
We always begin our staff meeting. I ask people to recite our vision, mission, values, all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, but one of the great things about the fact is that we've codified this. We memorize this. We recite this because that is a unifying factor for our church. When you come to our church, that's who we are, what we're about. Yeah. And while other churches have different agendas, and we don't oppose those, we're fine with those. Our agenda is this. Yeah. And so with that in mind, that allows transitions to occur, and all churches have transitions.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People, I always get this question. I'll get this question this week, and Drew, I know you will. So what's wrong?
What's wrong?
Why
really happened?
But just like in every other organization, people come, people go. God calls. I said last time, and you said today at our staff meeting, it's not about the seating capacity, it's about the sending capacity. Mm-hmm. We've got people on the mission field who used to be part of this church. We've got people who are pastors of other churches. And that's part, Paul didn't stay in one place. They were planting churches all over Asia Minor. Yeah. And so this is to be expected. In fact, if you look at the research, the average person stays in a church staff position somewhere between 3 and 5 years, depending on what their position is. So this happens, but the vision, the mission, the elder leadership stays the same and continues on course. But because we have this multiple executive team, teaching team, you tell us about your background and experience before you came here, Drew, so that people will understand this does not come as brand new territory for you, right?
Yeah, this has happened twice in my past. So I've come on staff to churches, and before I even went into the pulpit to preach in view of a call, the senior pastors were telling me that this was their last week of employment at the
we're
church.
Leaving now.
Isn't
that crazy?
It is
Let's
crazy.
not be a warning to anybody that ever hires Drew in the future.
It is so crazy.
They clearly just couldn't rise to your level of excellence.
It was the Shekinah glory coming off of his face. You're like, I can't stand to be in his presence. It's so holy.
No. Yeah, these pastors were executing their exit, but bringing staff members on, and so it just seems that God has brought me to churches that are in transition. So I've transitioned churches that had two services, contemporary, traditional, and 1,200 seat sanctuaries, and now the pastor's leaving with a 2-week notice, and the church is going from 800-900 down to 250, and now calling me into the pulpit to be the senior leader and having to figure out, where do I start? So you start with communication, you start with meeting with the leaders, and you start to just reassure the church that this is going to be okay. Yeah. Life Fellowship is not going to go down to 200 people. That's the blessing thing here.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is so important to remember is the uniqueness of our church really is built to sustain the leadership transition.
Yes.
If you think about it.
Yes.
There's a lot of churches that are built upon a man.
That's right.
They're built upon a person's gifting and ability, and you take them out and it's like,
that's right.
The church disappears.
Right, and that's what happened.
And I think one of the things that's great about this church, and I think the way we've set it up over the last 6 years, has been there is a shared leadership responsibility. This is not a one-man show. I mean, Dan and I have been team teaching now for 6 years now, and so our church is used to hearing multiple voices. It's not about Ben. It's not about Dan, and so I think that this is encouraging to me to know that just the way our structure is, it's built to sustain transition, and it's built to. And I think one of the things that Dan, you mentioned earlier, the beautiful thing about our church also is the vision, mission, and values. They're not changing. They don't change when a new pastor comes. It's almost like the new pastor is going to be like, you've got to adapt to this. Right. This is who we are. And if there's no clear-cut identity for a church, it can be pushed around and molded into the shape of what the senior pastor wants. And so I just know that this church is so healthy. It's such a good place that, man, the mission's not going to stop. We're going to still be, blessing people and doing all the things that we normally doing. You guys, with your experience of preaching and teaching and leadership, I have never been more confident in what I think a church is prepared to handle a transition like this than this church. Right. I'm serious. I'm not blowing smoke. I'm dead serious about that.
And that's where I was going. The first church that I was brought into where the senior pastor left, it was a mess. Okay. It was built on one name. So I had to restaff 26 staff members and get a church culture that was healthy again.
Wow.
And start training leaders. And I gave away leadership. I like to see people develop. Then the next church, the one in Wisconsin, it was a 15-year failure from a senior pastor where the church was devastated. And so I came into that church again as a mess that was built on one person and had to restructure, rebrand, recast vision because there was no vision. But coming here, it's set up to succeed. It really is. I'm a type of person that will not come in and demand that mission, vision, and values change because if it's not broke,
absolutely.
Don't try to mess with it.
That's right.
And so I think it'll be a blessing transitioning with this church because it is so healthy.
Yeah.
The elder board is so healthy, unified.
That's right.
Dan's wisdom, his tenure in the ministry, he has such a background that will undergird anybody that comes in.
Yes.
So working as a team, the one thing I want to see is somebody like Ben come back in. A guy that he's not the guy that has to be in the limelight. He is about people. He's about developing people and working as a team. So I'm excited. I am excited to work as a team.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into what we see going forward and how we staff and so forth. And so, Drew, you and I and Ben as well, we're all members of the elder team. Yeah. The elder team has between 6 and 8 right now. I think we're at 7 or 8.
7 right now. Yeah.
Elders on the team. We do not make decisions by plurality of vote. We do it by unity of vote. So we all come together. We keep working at it until we have a unified position on it. And so our moving forward, the plan that the elders are putting out is basically, first of all, we're not in a rush. We don't have to hurry. We're not desperate. Nobody's panicky because you've got 22 years of experience in senior pastor level. I've got 41 years of experience in pastoral ministry. So I've got 14 years almost finished here at Life. So everything administratively is going to continue because it's already been going on. Yeah. Everything's going to continue with
ministries
as we had planned it with your arrival. And not only that, because you're new, you've got fresh vision in how the implementation takes place. I think people in our church ought to anticipate some pretty cool things happening on. Some people, wanting to get involved, volunteering, leading, starting new life groups, and going on. We added a new youth pastor last year with Trey, and Trey Woodard has done just an amazing job. Our youth ministry, student ministry has almost doubled in a year. So, and in fact, church attendance is up between 100 and 150 on most Sundays from what it was a year ago. Our offerings are strong. So it's not a church in crisis.
No.
We don't have to put everything on a fast track and hurry. So we can be methodical, we can be prayerful, and we can be searching for the next person. And this ought to excite people.
Yeah.
Somebody out there in this country does not know it yet, but they're going to come be a part of the senior leadership team of Life Fellowship. I'm excited for them. They're going to be blessed. I was blessed 14 years ago when I, as a very burned out and broken guy, agreed to come on a staff position, and it's been one of the most healing, wonderful, fulfilling journeys of my entire life. So I anticipate that for someone else. But we formed a team, a search team that is comprised of the elders. Craig is the chairman. Barrett, thank you. Mental block there. Craig Barrett and I are going to serve as the co-chairs, and we may use a search team at some point, as we did to find Drew. But this may take a few months. It may take a year. Who knows? One thing's for sure is we don't want to get ahead of God. I took a course several years ago called Experiencing God. Drew, you took it as well, right?
Yeah, it's the first class I taught, Experiencing God. So, find out where God's working, join him, but there's going to be that crisis of belief, and we have to work through that.
Yeah.
One of the things, I know I can't share everything that happened at elders meeting the other night, but I think one of the things that the church should be encouraged by, if you were to listen in on our conversation last night, it was filled with every man there was saying, hey, let's make this a prayerful process. Let's make this a purposeful process. That there's a sense that God is working. And one of the elders was talking about, hey, if we just kind of take a step back and see how God has orchestrated these transitions over the years, we can see God's hand in all this. And it's really easy to say, like, I shared this with my other church when I transitioned. I said, if God's calling me away, he's calling someone too. Like, this is not like some event that surprised God. If God is the one who's calling me away, he's calling someone to this church. Like, I genuinely believe that. I know you guys believe that too. And so therefore, this confidence, not just even in you two to help lead the church, not just confidence in our elder team, God is working and moving, and he's doing something in another person's heart right now that is going to bring them here. And again, I wish we could all know the timing. Dan, more than anyone, wants to know the timeline.
I always want to know the timeline.
But I think the thing that we all need to be very comforted with and have the confidence in is God is in control, and he's orchestrated bring me here like he did 6.5 years ago, he's going to do the same thing. Like, it's not this is not outside. The church doesn't have to worry about, what's going to happen, because we can already look in our past and say, look what God has done. And because we can say, look at what God has done, we know that God will keep doing what he has always done.
Yeah.
And I think that is the leadership of this church is so committed to praying and fasting and seeking the Lord. And I think that should give every person here in our church a sense of just quiet confidence that, man, God's going to take care of us. God's going to take care of this church. He's going to provide the right leader at the right time in the right way. And therefore, we can keep trusting God.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, what I walked away from that meeting, just in a nutshell here, is that room was filled with great leaders. You know, the elder team, wonderful men of God that are good leaders. But the one leadership that we all really agreed on as to not get ahead of or behind is the leadership of the Holy Spirit.
That's right.
And so
that's right.
That's comforting to me, seeing that a group of guys really relying on
100%.
the power and the leadership of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Well, as we look to the next 2.5, 3 months, as you begin the closing of this ministry, the opening of your next ministry, we are right now in the book of Psalms.
Yep.
And so we will continue that into August.
Starting in August 1st, we have a new series.
And then in August 1st, tell us the series that we're going to be starting.
Yeah, so we're going to be starting a series in the Gospel of Mark. And I went away this past spring, planned out from the first Sunday in August till Easter Sunday. I think it's the third weekend in April. I don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere in April. Our church will be going through the Gospel of Mark. And we've broken up the gospel into 3 sections, the way that the book is broken down. And I am super excited. It's going to be a year. It's going to be, about 9 months of walking the, overview of the life of Jesus. And Mark is the shortest gospel. It's this gospel of action. It's this gospel of just, and immediately he went there. Immediately. It's most people believe that the Gospel of Mark was Peter's sermon of the story of the life of Jesus. And John Mark, recorded this sermon and kind of put it into written form. But the whole idea is to call people to a life of discipleship, to call people to a life of following Jesus, and to live a life the way that Jesus sacrificed and served others, will we sacrifice and serve others. And so it's a beautiful gospel. I think it's a gospel for people who are saying, let's do something. And we want to be a church that does something for Jesus, doesn't just think about Jesus, doesn't just we shouldn't ever check our brains out the door, but let's be a church that lives out the life and the calling of our Messiah. And I think that is why I'm so excited about the Gospel of Mark. So for the next 9 months, we're going to be in the Gospel of Mark, and it's going to be an amazing journey for our church.
Yeah. We're looking forward to that. And again, that's part of our philosophy that provides us stability, is that we're systematic in the teaching of the Word of God. We periodically will do sermons that relate to something going on in the culture, some topic. Yep. But for the most part, you can expect a regular expositional series as part of our systematic study through the Word of God, as part of our church philosophy of teaching. But there's a couple other things going on. For instance, as we introduce this podcast, we have between 75 and 80 of our young people who are on their way to camp. And so that continues. We've got several activities planned for our student ministry as they ramp up to the beginning of the school year. We have a ladies' event that's going to be taking place this fall on September 15th, which is the third Sunday in the month of September. We're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of the founding of the church. I'm so glad you're still going to be here for that, Ben.
So glad.
And so we're going to be doing dinner on the grounds that day, some fun activities, some celebration as a part of that service. So that'll be on September 20th. Or September 15th, our 20th anniversary. And then we approach then into October. And October 6th is going to be your final Sunday in your full role here as the church. It won't be your final Sunday ever at the church, but it'll be your final Sunday in your role as one of our pastors.
And I'm looking forward, I know we've already talked about this, but man, I want to come back. Like, I want to come back.
Oh, you're coming back if we got to kidnap you.
I want to come back and see what God's doing. I know I'll be back sometime around May of next year, because I'll be graduating. My son will be graduating. So I know for sure a weekend or so I'll be back here. But I want to keep, this will always be home from kind of a semi home for me. You know, I've lived in North Carolina now. Liz and I have lived here for 24 years. It's where our kids were born. It's where our kids were raised. This will always hold a place in our heart, and I anticipate us coming back here to see everyone. So I will look forward to the invitation to come back and preach anytime you guys want.
And
me
I know
to.
Drew and I both agree that their invitations will be in the mail.
Yeah, come January when you have 3,000 feet of snow in your backyard.
And we're having a heat wave. We haven't had snow in 3 years?
I'm sure that for the January, February, and March, you guys are going to be sending me pictures of every day
of Drew in
the
his
beach.
bikini.
Yes. It's my two-piece. Yeah.
Every sunny, warm day in those 3 months, you're just gonna be saying, "Hey, look what's going on here down here in North Carolina." And be like, "Shut up."
Yeah, when the fruit trees are blooming in February, and
But you know
are
what?
just getting a fresh
I'll be
blizzard.
enjoying the beauty of the white. Great.
You'll be ice skating.
Yeah, I'll be ice skating. I'll be snowmobiling. I'll be
Bobsledding.
Marriage counseling.
Here's what I've agreed to.
Vitamin D and sun lamps.
I will embrace the snow. You have to. You can't.
So we want a picture of you making a snow angel in.
I will send you a picture of me. So here's actually kind of funny story. We went to there's this great discount shoe outlet in Asheville. Have you heard about this? It's right by
there.
So anyways,
It's like in a long strip mall thing. It's weird.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's not like super discounted, but it's about 25% less than typical retail places. And so we go there last week or a couple weeks ago, and
You drove to Asheville to shoe shop?
well, we also want to hit some restaurants and do some other.
Okay,
I mean,
that's a long trip to buy shoes.
well, not for my wife, but
Okay, make sure you edit that out.
so we go there, and I'm like, we're moving up to Michigan, and so I'm looking at all these. I mean, so many different kinds of boots, and we asked the person who worked there, we need the boots that are the warmest, driest boot that we can possibly get, and so I bought some
Muckalucks.
No, they're called Danners. Have you heard of
It's a brand.
Danners.
Danners.
Danner.
That's a brand, isn't it?
Yeah, Danner boots. So I bought Danner boots a few weeks ago, and they're very comfortable and they're very warm. They're so warm, it's like
Like me.
you're my Danner.
Just warm and fuzzy.
Just warm and fuzzy. So comfortable. It's like Dan loves it when you hug him every single time. He's
I'm the fine hugger. I don't have problems with hugging.
No, you don't.
No, it's other people on our staff that have issues with hugging, but not me. So everybody
My
go
sons
hug.
hug you every single Sunday when they see you.
Your sons
But
count how many times they can hug me because it does get irritating after about the 30th.
By the way, I can just tell a quick story. So it's first time my oldest son Jaden meets Drew, and you got to know my oldest son Jaden. He just loves to test people, like to see what they would say.
Poking the
And did you hear
bears.
the first thing he said to
Yeah,
him?
I heard.
He said, "So Drew, what do you think about wizards?"
And I said, "Why? I'm a warlock. I eat wizards for lunch."
That's just my son. I can't describe, but that's just Jaden.
There were
Anyways.
some very interesting topics that were thrown around.
Anyways.
To get a reaction. Well,
Fun.
It's been fun chatting and getting caught up. We just wanted to share with our friends at Life Fellowship just kind of what you're expecting. Hey, if you have questions, ask us. Again, I always say there's never a bad question, just good questions that aren't asked properly. So you just ask a good question, ask it properly, and we'll make sure that we either answer you privately or maybe we'll put something together for a Life Talks. Ben and Drew and I are still going to continue to rotate our responsibilities here, both in the pulpit and on this podcast in the weeks to come. We want you to feel communicated to, comfortable with, and informed of all the things that are going on. God's going to do some great things at Life Fellowship in the
Amen.
days to come, as He has done faithfully for 20 years. So we anticipate His best. Thanks as always for listening to us here at Life Talks.